Hello and welcome to the second Howard Liddell Memorial Lecture. These events are dedicated to my late husband, Howard Liddell, community and ecological architect, founder of Gaia Scotland and co-founder of CEDA. He was one of the leading ecological design architects in Europe, with 40 years' experience at the forefront of sustainable architecture. This event will follow the theme of EcoMax set out in the first memorial lecture in 2015 by focusing on the life and legacy of Rachel Carson. My brief introduction will be followed by the film The Power of One Voice, and then a reading of a play by Liz Rothschild. Howard was an uncompromising, hugely influential, and much loved. As an ecological architect, he was at the forefront of reintroducing timber building back into Scotland, where it had long been considered inappropriate. He was also very much a community architect, famously turning a notorious estate in Perthshire into somewhere people actually wanted to live. Not looking like municipal architecture, and with a genuine sense of pride. It won a World Habitat Award in 2012. When the National Trust for Scotland wanted a building with the lightest footprint it was possible to have in Glencoe, that is what Howard gave them. His influence continues. This year, there was an exhibition in Eyemouth, a 500-year anniversary of Thomas More's Utopia. And it was an opportunity to display Glencoe with its reflect, inspire, and reconcile agenda. We got hugely creative, creating scarves, materials, and posters based on the palette of Glencoe. Howard sought to bring delight to all his projects, helping people and communities fulfill their dreams without harming the planet. Always respectful of nature in all its forms, and always with an eye to the little guy in architecture. Many will know Howard as the author of the much acclaimed book Eco-Minimalism, The Antidote to Eco-Bling. Many of you will also know that that was not intended to be the end of the story. When Howard died in 2013, he was working on EcoMax. This was an opportunity to talk about many of the underrepresented issues around sustainability. And Howard wished to do this by paying respect to pioneers who had influenced him. This was the theme of my lecture in 2015, which is available on the CEDA website. One of these underrepresented ideas is toxicity. I've known for probably 40 years that bees are dying, and we are encouraged in aspects of our life to be nice and be butterfly nice, but rarely so in architecture and the built environment. It's hardly ever part of the agenda. Unfortunately, we have a problem. 1 in 11 native species of animals and plants in Scotland is at risk of extinction. 18% of butterflies, 15% of dragonflies, and 13% of plants face dying out. Changes in agricultural practices, the ongoing use of pesticides, the loss of hedgerows are amongst the biggest factors behind the widespread decline of species. Howard and I very much believe that architecture and planning of the built environment has a role to play in reversing this decline. We can build with nature. At the moment, much of our experience is building things like this, the lollipop trees, or just these barren, sparse environments that we encourage our children to be brought up in. It need not be so. We can build with nature and in nature. So, addressing this theme very much is Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson drew attention to the impact of DDT on the natural world. She was an American marine biologist and conservationist who identified the war against nature as a war against ourselves. She began her career as an aquatic biologist and in the late 1950s then turned her attention to conservation and the environmental damage from synthetic pesticides. She became a full-time nature writer in the 1950s. Her Sea Trilogy explores the whole of ocean life and is a delight. But her book Silent Spring, published in 1962, is credited with advancing the global environmental movement. It brought environmental concerns to a generation, presenting a vision of a town and surroundings silenced by the impact of chemicals, mainly DDT. It inspired a grassroots environmental movement that led to the creation of the US Environmental Protection Agency. Soon after the release of the book, there was a groundswell of public demand for information and a rise in institutions with the purpose of environmental protection. President Kennedy was moved to investigate the impacts of DDT and then to ban its use along with other pesticides. These have been proved responsible for the increase in cancer and other diseases. Research had identified DDT in human breast milk and associated it with numerous human health concerns, including breast cancer, testicular tumours, diabetes, and altered neural development. The publication of Silent Spring also increased research into environmental chemistry and is widely acknowledged as leading to the identification of the damaging effects of polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs. The book, however, met fierce opposition from chemical companies, and Rachel herself had to face ridicule, antagonism, and sometimes disbelief. She was pilloried in her professional life. Ironically, she died after a battle with breast cancer. So, for some more information and background, I'll be playing The Power of One Voice, a 50-year perspective on the life of Rachel Carson, a documentary examining the life and profound implications of her environmental work. After this, I've asked Liz Rothschild, a celebrant and performer, to give a reading of her play, Breaking the Silence, which I can guarantee you will enjoy. Out of interest, I think one of the things we can do in looking to how we as professionals address this issue is perhaps to examine in more detail our responsibilities as designers and specifiers. And there is a film that I'm suggesting that we might want to see on another occasion.
Chemists work very hard to create new products, and they're very good at it. It's never been their responsibility to ask, is the molecule I've just designed likely to be toxic? They don't do that. That's not been viewed as their work. So what happens? They invent a new molecule. A manufacturer realizes, oh, that's a neat molecule. I can use it to make something really valuable. It goes into the marketplace. It expands in the marketplace, it becomes highly valuable, lots of money starts to be made off of it, and 10 years later, some toxicologist says, it's in our bodies, what might it be doing? So there's this time gap between invention and taking it to market and beginning the toxicological tests, which inevitably leads to a battle. It's a battle between the people who are making money off of it, who say, oh, we've been using it for 10 years and we've never seen a problem, and the scientists who begin to ask the right questions, because some of these questions are quite complex.
Society had an impression in the past that we didn't need to worry about chemicals, and nature would take care of it. If you threw the chemicals on the ground, the sun would break them down, or the bacteria would break them down, or they would become dilute in the water and not dangerous. And we didn't know that that was not always the case.
What's new about these chemicals is they are not known to us. In other words, they come in under the radar, if you will, and enter our bodies subversively without our knowledge.
Thank you very much to the film and the play.